What is up, guys? I'm Envy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking every single Colourpop 9-pan palette I own and talking way too much. So if that is something that you're interested in, keep on watching. So I have too many Colourpop 9-pan palettes, but it is very easy for me to fall into them because I like smaller color stories and the price is relatively good. They're anywhere from like $12 to $14, and most of the time they're gonna go on sale and then they're gonna be $9 and it's like a dollar shadow. And anyway, this video is me telling on myself in a way, because no matter how good the price is, it is still a waste of money if I don't use it. And that, my friends, is what some people would call a transition. So, palettes that I own and have spent money on but have never used. They are Spun, Cherry Crush, Main Squeeze, Going Coconuts, and on Cloud Blue. So that is 5 out of, spoiler alert, 18 palettes. So that isn't the best thing, being pretty much 1/3 of the palettes that I have, but I thought it was gonna be worse in all honesty. So let me just give like a little bit of like, I don't know, an introduction to all of them. Spun. I haven't even taken the little mirror thing off. Ugh, and I love taking the little mirror things off. Ugh. So I'm gonna actually pivot this way for once. Ooh, I'm different. Spun is more of like a bubblegum pink palette color story, yes. It does have one pressed glitter. I don't see any mattes with pressed glitter, but there are 5 out of the 9 shades that are labeled as not safe for the eye area, the glitter included. And that just means that there is dyes or something that hasn't been approved in the US for use in the immediate eye areas due to it staining, or could maybe cause, some people, it can cause like a reaction on the sensitive eye skin. I have seen some people, like with the James Charles palette, there was, whenever that was first released, the shade Skip, I think, that pink shade, it caused staining. And then I think one girl, her eye got like inflamed and like extra pink from it. So this is kind of like use at your own risk, but being labeled as like not safe for the eye area is kind of relative, because a lot of these shades are approved for use in like the UK, the EU, other places where their like health systems are more, have tested cosmetics to on a more broader extent. So just because you've heard some horror stories and just because it's labeled this way does not mean that they shouldn't be in eyeshadows to begin with. So yeah, that's Spun. Next is Cherry Crush, no mirror, hate that. I bought this palette and the next palette actually for like a big palette comparison that ended up never happening, so hell yeah. But there are no pressed glitters and I don't see any mattes with glitter, but if I look on the back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of the 9 shades, so everything but Cherry Stem, which is this more like a neutral-ish mauve blending shade, are not approved for use on the immediate eye area. Again, if that is something that scares you, go ahead and don't buy this. I just want to let you know, but I've only swatched this. I haven't put this on my eye, so I don't know if I have a reaction to it, but this is just kind of like the section where it's like, hey, here's a little bit of inventory, but I can't say whether I hate it or not because I haven't used it. The next palette, which is the palette that I bought to compare with Cherry Crush, is the Main Squeeze palette. She looks like this. No pressed glitter, doesn't look like there's any mattes with glitter. I have had some of the mattes with glitter that I don't see the glitter until after I dip my brush in for the first time. It was like that on the Making Mauves palette. Making Mauves? or yeah, Making Mauves, that's what it was. The 9-pan mauve palette, I was like, there's only like 2. And then I dipped my brush into one and I was like, oh, there's 3, okay. And in this one, 2 of the shades, Like It's Hot and Baywatch, ooh, let me hold this up actually. Like It's Hot and Baywatch are not approved for the use on the immediate eye area. I'm surprised Home Slice is approved because that's like the brightest red, but hey, whatever. Here is Main Squeeze. I'll use you eventually, I promise. You're red and that's my favorite color. The next palette is what I'm sure a lot of people are going to be surprised that I haven't used with, because it is the Going Coconuts palette and it is neutral and like very much loved by like everyone. But I haven't used it. I'm sorry, I think I've swatched it and like that's it. I think my friend Amy Loves Makeup like really likes this palette and I just haven't used it and I'm sorry, but there are no pressed glitters. It looks like there might be one matte with pressed glitter, that is Get Crackin'. Get Crackin' looks like it's a matte with like silver glitter, but everything looks like it's labeled as safe for the eye area. So yeah, here is this. This part is probably very boring because I'm just like, yeah, I haven't used it, but here's what's in it, just in case you're interested. But I'm doing it anyway, just for like accountability, because I don't want to just talk about 13 palettes when I have 18, you know what I mean? And the last one, I'm sure no one is going to be surprised that I didn't use, is the On Cloud Blue palette. She looks like this. My little story with On Cloud Blue is I bought it because my ex-boyfriend told me to.
I'm gonna paint my eyelids blue because Josh loves blue.
So there is one pressed glitter that is Delight. That's right there in the middle. I love pressed glitters. I know everyone hates them, but I love them. I don't see any mattes with pressed glitter, and the only shade that is labeled as not safe for the immediate eye area is Delight. So here is On Cloud Blue. So now that those 5 are all, oh, I almost dropped it, oh my god. Now that those 5 are over with, let's get on to the actual like ranking and like getting into it. I almost wish that I haven't used like 3 more, that way I could have a top 10 list, but I don't want to be sued by Watch Mojo. Number 13, Burger King Foot Lettuce.
Burger King foot lettuce. The last thing you'd want in your Burger King burger is someone's foot fungus, but as it turns out, that might be what you get.
I hope I could find that. Oh, that's so awful. Anyway, number 13 is my Wine and Only palette. So, this was, I think I've used this in a palette comparison or maybe just a regular video. I know I've used it because I have an eye look on my Instagram using it. So here she is, no pressed glitter. This I keep wanting to say grapefruit. Grapeful, this one is the only matte with pressed glitter, but this is a red palette. So let's see how many of these aren't safe for the eye area. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, 5 out of the 9 shades, kind of like 1, 2, are not safe for the immediate eye area, whether due to dyes, but I did kind of use this. This was another, I was gonna try and like compare Colourpop's other red palettes to the cherry palette that just came out. So I had this one and then I was gonna buy, and then I did buy the Main Squeeze one. I was gonna compare them both and see if it was like needed. So I've used it in swatching recently, definitely. And then whenever I used it on my eye, I noticed that it kind of is like that Colourpop formula where I experienced it a lot in the Raw Beauty Kristi palette. That's just the first palette that comes to mind because that's the first palette that had ever happened to me, but it would be where I would put the shadow on and then I'd like let it sit, but then whenever I went to blend it away, it just blended everything away. Like the pigment wouldn't stick or something, like the eyeshadow just sat on top. It didn't really blend. It just kind of brushed away and left like a slight flush of color. I feel like I should be holding this up while I talk. That way there's at least something to like entertain your eyes other than my face. Oh, Sip Sip. Sip Sip is also, I literally wrote this down. I'm trying to be like cool and like, I don't need to use a script. I remember everything. But so Sip Sip and Grateful are mattes with pressed glitter in it. But anyway, so Yeah, just the mattes have too much fallout for the lack of pigmentation, and the shimmers aren't like the most standout blinding shades. These are all relatively like neutral shades. Like this is kind of like a champagne, this is like a purple, this is like a red, and this is like a darker brown purples. But it's still, there seems to be something lacking from this palette, and I'm really sad because I love red and I had kind of high hopes for this. And the quality isn't horrible, like per se. It is just my least favorite due to how kind of bland the formula is. Next, number 12 on the list is That's Taupe. So That's Taupe has no glitters, no matte with pressed glitters, and nothing on the back that indicates that it is unsafe for use on the immediate eye area. I just don't like it. Kind of like the last palette, the mattes have a lot of fallout for the lack of pigmentation that they have, but the shimmers are a lot better, I would say. So Slated and Snake Eyes are stunning shades. Slated is a super shock shade, so it does kind of have like a little more to it. It kind of feels like wet. And Snake Eyes is just very, very smooth, but Cold Blooded and Constrictor are like dry, and they're just not it for me, honestly. This kind of looks like a matte, and then they just like put glitter on it, or shimmer on it, I guess I should say. But like, I don't enjoy the quality of this palette. I've used this, I know that I used this in my, I need to keep holding it up. I know that I used this in a palette comparison between this and the Stone Cold Fox, and I think this one came out on top, but I have since changed the way that I do eyeshadow, and I did like film a palette comparison that ended up kind of falling through between this and a Juvia's Place palette, but oh boy, I don't like this. Since changing the way that I do my eyeshadow, I don't like the way that this works on me now. But again, that could just be the way that I do eyeshadow. It used to be like pretty high up on my list, but now not so much. So that is why it is lower on the list. Next, number 11 is the Making Mauves palette. So there are no pressed glitters. There is one matte with glitter, which is tongue-tied, but otherwise there is nothing that is listed as unsafe for use on the immediate eye area. So these three shimmers are pretty okay. So this, I kind of struggled going back and forth between this one and That's Taupe, but this one I would say is better than That's Taupe because at least 3 shimmers are good instead of the 2 shimmers that were like pretty great and the other 2 that were like garbage. This at least has like 3 okay shimmers, but the mattes are kind of still the same quality. Marquee is kind of difficult to work with, and I just don't like it. I don't know. Do you guys ever feel that way? Like you get an eyeshadow palette and you're like, wow, no, you know? I've done a couple palette comparisons using this. The one that I can think of would be the Making Mauves and the Menage a Moi palette, which those actually came out at like a similar time-ish last year, so, but I would just have to say that this palette is, maybe I'm just not drawn to it, and so then whenever anything like goes wrong while using it, I'm just like, ugh, this again. But it's just a boring palette. It's okay. It's okay. And I'm used to Colourpop 9pan palettes being a little bit better than okay. So that's why this one kind of falls below everything else, but still better than the other ones. Next, number 10 is the Grandeur palette. She looks like this. Now I did do a 3 looks 1 palette using this palette. I will have it linked up here. Don't watch it. My makeup was horrible. Oh god, those freckles. Anyway, but I used this and it's all right. It's an all right palette. This is very much just like an all right palette. So Excess is a pressed glitter and Monaco is a matte with glitter, and Jolie. Matte and Jolie are mattes with glitter, but Monaco, it almost looks like it could be like a shimmer with how much pressed glitter is in it. Let me see. The only thing that is labeled as unsafe for the immediate eye area is Excess. Now, I guess the thing that kind of like puts this below like everything else would be Need. And Lavish. Need and Lavish, these 2 shimmers, aren't the best for me. So Need is kind of like a blue-red duochrome that a lot of brands try, and I think Colourpop has a couple of like other palettes with a shade like this, but it just doesn't stand out compared to like actual duochromes from It's Belle, Adept Cosmetics, or Sugar Drizzle. And Lavish is just kind of, it's all right. It's just an all right shimmer. I do like House. I like House. It's a very, very stunning, very reflective, like white champagne shade. But man, it really dropped the ball with Lavish and Need. I love the packaging though. But I do really like the mattes. So Velvet, Dusk, and Mode are all pretty much like the same shade, but I do really, really like them. I have deepened my crease with like Jolie, and even though there's a glitter in it, I still think that it looks like a nice pigmented dark brown. And so this is just kind of one of those, like, that's the thing. I don't think any Colourpop 9-pan palettes are like trash garbage. I have some 12-pan palettes that I think are trash garbage. So whenever I compare this to like those, I'm like, no, this is amazing. All these palettes are amazing. But comparing them to like one another, it's just like, oh, it's kind of like pulling teeth. And so what I was doing was I was like, after I started doing this, I was just like, oh, I was trying to like find which ones are like actually better or worse, as opposed to just being like, these are like the lower 5, and then there's going to be like the upper 5, and then there's going to be the top 3. So this was like the really pulling teeth section, but I do like this palette. I have used this palette since I filmed that video like almost a year ago. Like 9 months ago. I think I filmed it in like January or something, but I have used this since, and I do really like it. It is just in comparison to the shades, in comparison to the palettes that I have coming up next, I do think that it falls a little flat in the shimmer department. And I do understand that not a lot of people like mattes with pressed glitter or glitters, so that takes away like a third of the palette that people would want to use. And then with these 2 shades not being good, it's like, wow, a 9-pan with 4 acceptable shades. Next. That last one got a little like ranty. I don't know where that came from. Obviously my soul, but I don't know why. Up next is the Honey palette. Now I keep calling this Oh Honey because I watch too much Trixie Mattel, but she looks like this. She has 1 pressed glitter, Palooza, which also happens to be the only thing labeled as not safe for the eyes on the palette, and no mattes with pressed glitters. Now, this one is a little bit lower on the list, which kind of surprised me because I remember waiting for restocks because this was Colourpop's most wanted like 9-pan for a really, really long time. But the shades just kind of pull a little weird on me. Now I do have like more of a neutral to golden like undertone, but like, man, like this brown, it's like a brown with like, you blend it out, it kind of looks like a sickly orange, which normally I would love that, but I just feel like, I don't know. This palette just looks weird on me sometimes. And so this is like more of a personal thing more than like a quality thing, where it's not a bad palette. It's just sometimes, I need to use this palette with something else. I need to use this palette. I need to get a deeper brown. That way this doesn't look so like alien-ish on me, which some people might really like that. But I just, yeah. Oh Behave and Sweet Spot, these 2 yellows right here, I didn't quite like them. Sweet Spot was very like chunky and chalky on me. Oh Behave was all right, but like formula wise, I would have to say that like Sweet Spot and Sunburst, who am I? Sweet Spot and Sunburst are 2 of like the weaker shades. This shade doesn't do like a lot. It's a very much like a chunky, chalky, like yellow with a white shift. And wow, I'm having issues. Sweet Spot is very much more like just a difficult chalky yellow. So that's why, like, objectively it's a good palette, just maybe not for me, which is why it isn't in like, I was kind of going back and forth on whether this should be where Grandeur is, but then I felt like I was pulling teeth because it's once, oh no, 9th versus 10th, oh my god. So then this is good for like pretty much everyone else. I just have to use it with something else, actually another palette that I will talk about in a bit. But yeah, it's an alright formula, it's just not my favorite. So that was the end of like the lower 5 palettes. So here is like the middle 5, to where it was just like, these are kind of in like no particular order. They're just all like very middle of the pack palettes. So next is She's Got Solstice, a palette that you have probably never heard of before because it was an Ulta exclusive for a really long time. So there are no pressed glitters, no mattes with glitter, and nothing labeled as not eye safe. Why is this ahead of everything else? It's because, man, Super Stardust is a stunning shimmer. I would put this at Natasha Denona quality. Like, it's kind of like that foiled but really blendable like type of shimmer, and I really love it. So Serious is also a really good shade. I've used Estrella and Mars a little bit, and they're okay, but like the mattes are all creamy. Yes, they're all very like nude, mid-toned, boring mattes, but they work for my skin tone, and this is my list, so I'm sorry. This is objective like that. But man, I do really like this palette, but it kind of is like a double-edged sword where it's great because it's boring and they didn't try too hard, but I don't reach for it because it's boring and they didn't try too hard. So that's why it's kind of on the lower end of the list, but there's none of the quality issues that I felt with any of the other palettes. Like, oh, I love Super Stardust so much. I just really enjoy this palette objectively. I don't even think you can get it anymore, which is why I'm not going into like super detail, but I have a 9 pan. This is rating 9 pans. Here it is. Next is my Baby Got Peach palette. So there is a pressed glitter that is Hungry Ghost. There are no mattes with glitter, but both Hungry Ghost and Centerfold are labeled as not eye safe. This palette, they really started labeling what was and wasn't eye safe, like whenever it started coming out, but they started putting the asterisk, if you have this palette, you can see, on the actual like shade name as opposed to just on the sticker on the back, and I really appreciate that. I wish that they would bring back putting the little asterisk on the actual shade name on the front of the palette. It's so funny because Hungry Ghost was a glitter that was featured in another palette, I can't remember. So whenever this one came out and I saw that Hungry Ghost and Centerfold had asterisks, I was just like, does the asterisk mean that they're repeat shades? And because it was on Trend Mood's like comment section, and someone got really mad at me and they're like, no, you idiot, it means they're not eye safe.
Excuse me, princess.
But anyway, I have used this in a palette comparison, comparing it to the Clarity Cosmetics Juicy Peach palette. And I did kind of get onto this palette because there isn't a lot of depth, which there isn't. This definitely could be a little bit darker, but moving on, looking at this palette like objectively, it is very pretty. The shimmers, like the only shimmer that I think is like really good is Get Even. These other two shimmers, they kind of look a little bit bland on the eye. The like Ochre, it's okay. There just isn't a lot of like pigment, but I understand like the vibes of this being like a soft peach palette. I just feel like they could have done a little bit better. I just feel like some of these shades could have been like more orange, because there's different types of like peach. Peach ranges in like colors, you know? There could be like a salmon shade, which I know that people are going to be saying that like, well, if you're describing it as salmon and orange, then it's not peach. But like peaches come in many colors, you know? There isn't just the one peach shade. I just feel like there could have been a lot more variety done with this, but the quality isn't horrible. It just isn't up to par with like what I've come to expect from other brands and Colourpop. So that is why it's kind of on this like little mid-tier list, because yeah, I just have better. Up next is my Colourpop Coastal Coral palette. So there are no pressed glitters. There are 2 mattes with pressed glitter in it, that is Keep Swimming and Drop Off, and then Keep Swimming and Anemone over here are labeled as not safe for the immediate eye area. I do really enjoy this palette. Again, this is in like no particular order. This is just like, it's not in my final 3, but it also isn't like bad. So yeah, actually like looking at this palette again made me like kind of sad, because so this was my first ever palette comparison. I compared this to the Colourpop Sweet Talk palette, and it was like it was my first video to like get over 100 views in like a certain period of time, and I was like really excited for it. And it really kind of just started my love of doing palette comparisons. But overall, this isn't a bad palette. I wish this shade didn't exist. I wish this shade were something, the coral, something more coral, something that wasn't like a nude coral. I do very much enjoy, like with the shimmers, that atoll, yes. I do like that with like the shimmer. So atoll is like a gold with a slight peach shimmer. Diver is a peach with a slight gold shimmer. And then there's the keys, which is a peach with gold shimmer. And it makes me really sad to say the keys because that was an inside joke with my parents and they don't love each other anymore. That is a joke. I use humor as a coping mechanism. It's fine. Anyway, here we go. This, I just feel like this palette could have been more coral. It is a very stunning palette, but I just wish that like this, if you're gonna have these three be like coralish browns, this needed to be like a salmon, you know? If these two shades are just kind of different, like this is more like neutral and this is more warm. That's it. I feel like a lot more could have been done with this palette. You know, I feel like concept-wise, this palette could have stepped up a bit. The quality is great and I love it. And I still stand by thinking that it's an amazing palette for like fall. This purely doesn't land in like my top 3 due to the concept kind of falling flat, because like, look at this. Look at all the peaches and corals in here. The only thing that's kind of a semblance of anything on the packaging would be like this and this. But there's, I see like on the back, I see this like salmon shade that I want. Give it to me. All right, these next two are kind of in an order where it was like, both of these next two were in the top like 3 at one point, but it was just like really figuring things out. I like switched them out. But number 5 is Wild Child, and she looks like this. Now, I haven't used her on my channel. I bought this to do a palette comparison between this and the Natasha Denona Bronze palette, but I hated that video and I scrapped it. Not because the look looked bad, because I wasn't having a funky fresh time, I think. But anyway, so there is one pressed glitter and one matte with pressed glitter, yeah. So the pressed glitter right here is called Lashes, and the matte with pressed glitter is Grasslands, but only Grasslands is labeled as unsafe for the eye area. I think it's because Lashes, if you can see, is very fine and like small pieces of glitter, as opposed to like big chunks of glitter. Here, give me a minute. If you can see, here is Clementine, here is Lashes, and here is Palooza. So on Clementine and Lashes, hopefully you can see that there's like larger chunks that pick up, where on Lashes, there is it's all like the same small reflective glitter. I think the bigger chunks in these glitters are what make it technically unsafe for the eye area. But I'm hoping you can see that. Let me bring it up even further. Hopefully you can see that. I think that's the reason why. But obviously, I'm not Colourpop, so I don't know. So after that stunning demonstration, my arm is now covered in glitter, but let's get right back into this. So I did use this on my eyes and I love it. I actually really like it. Fierce is again one of those like what I would call like Natasha Denona-esque shimmers, where it's more of like a foil and it's just really striking on the eye, where I feel like this kind of went down out of the top 3 is because of Icon. That is kind of like what I was complaining about in the That's Taupe shades, where it's very dry. It's kind of like a matte with just like a little bit of shimmer, but it's not like a matte with pressed glitter. It's just a very dull shimmer, and I don't like it. So out of the like 3 shimmer shades, like only 2 of them, like one is bad, one is okay, and one is amazing. So I feel kind of like weird putting something that I don't like all of it kind of in this palette. Also, Feisty is one of those mattes where, like what I was describing before with like the Robbie DeChristie palette, where if I put it down, whenever I go to blend it out, it'll just poof, it's gone. and it will kind of leave like a light dusting of the color, and that's not what I want. I have like a weird hiccup thing going on, sorry. Yeah, it's a pretty palette. I do like it. In my Natasha Denona comparison, the shades that I compared to it were pretty similar, pretty spot on, but there are a lot of like duochromes in that palette, and it was just kind of weird. It was just a weird vibes in general, but love Fierce. I like lashes. I like this top row up. Oh, I do like Hard to Get. I just don't really like Icon and Feisty, and in some of these other palettes I like everything. Bam, that's why. Next is the Colourpop Lil Ray of Sunshine palette. I'm actually gonna do the smart thing and bend it this way. So I love this palette. It is an all matte palette, so there's no mattes with glitter. Nothing is labeled as unsafe for the eye area. And this makes me want to play with like duochromes. It makes me want to, because like if I put this in a project pants, if there's no shimmer, I can use more duochromes. Oh my goodness, instead of feeling obligated to use the palette shimmers that are in my project pan. And that's the thing, like what kept this out of the top 3 is the fact that it is all matte, because I know that that's not everyone's cup of tea. Also, I feel like this first like row and a half is just like too similar and not really all inclusive. Sunny's, this middle shade, is what I was talking about in the Honey palette, where like that's the yellow that I have to kind of like help to bring everything together. It is this true like marigold, like sunflower yellow, and I love it so much. But I feel like what kept this out of the top 3 was mainly just this top row. Like we didn't need all of this. I feel like we could have gone a little deeper or something, but the quality on this is amazing. I don't know if you can see how big of like a dip I have in this shade. This is like my perfect blending shade. So I used to have, well, I still do have, I've just depotted it, the Kylie Cosmetics Burgundy palette, and Beach in that shade is like my perfect blending shade. And I've been looking like for it in another palette all over the place because I just don't want to use the depotted anyway. I kind of found it in this. I love this shade. This shade and Sunny's are like stunning, beautiful. Actually, like this whole, like the final like 5 shades of this palette make the whole palette. I love like from here over. It is so good. These light shades, they're just a little too dull, because like this is kind of more of a gray. This is also really cool toned, and like this one is definitely more like, it looks a little bit like a yellow on camera, but it's more like a gray. It kind of just dulls everything out, and so I just feel like I have too many like gripes, and like it's great, but it's amazing, but to put it into my top 3. But this is a very stunning all matte palette. If you need an all matte palette to use with your duochromes, I'd say go with this. I love it a lot. I wish it went a little deeper, but Colourpop will do what Colourpop does. So yeah. Alrighty, we are down to the final 3. The top 3 were really hard to pick, but I think I figured it out. So number 3 is the Colourpop and Star Wars The Mandalorian collaboration, the Child palette. So there are no pressed glitters. There's one matte with pressed glitter. That is the shade Little Frog. This is an extremely dirty palette. I don't know if it's picking it up, but nothing is labeled as unsafe for the eye area. I think this is amazing, an amazing green palette. I like how like every little row is a theme. Like this is like a little more neutral, obviously. A little bit more of like a pale pastel kind of vibe, and then kind of like an olive. I love this palette. I've used this palette several times, like in real life and also as like palette comparisons. I know I did one with Jeffree Star, I'll have it linked up here, and something else, I can't quite remember, but I love this palette. The Force, I love this shade. I think this is actually a pretty good dupe for Brass in the Natasha Denona Bronze palette, in like formula and like quality. That doesn't have as strong of like a gold shift, but it still is like really good. Precious Cargo is cute. It's like a white-ish, green-ish, super shock shadow. I really like it. Just like a Tatooine, whenever I blended it out, yeah, it looks kind of like nude over here, but it does kind of have like a little bit of like a greenish undertone that was really coming through. I love it. I think this is great. I think this is a stunning palette. I love everything about it. I think they hit the mark on the formula. I think they hit the mark on the color story, and I think they hit the mark on the concept. So love this amazing palette. If you like greens, I was hesitant to buy this, but if you like greens, if you like Star Wars, if you like good eyeshadow, I think you should get this. All right, my penultimate palette is my Colourpop Orange Glad palette. So there is one pressed glitter, I'm gonna put that down. One pressed glitter right here, that is Clementine. I have used the snot out of that glitter. It is my favorite pressed glitter of all time. There are no mattes with pressed glitter. Let me see, anything? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 shades are labeled as not safe for the immediate eye area. That is this entire middle row, and Mimosa Mommy, this really, really bright orange down here. I think it looks almost like pink or red. That's how like vibrant it is on camera. That's awesome. But yeah, love this palette. I think they nailed the orange concept completely. Like, I want to complain about Zested, but Zested, once you like blend it out, does have like an orange tint. It's just like this light orange background kind of washes it out and makes it look like a nude. I love Creamsicle, like oh God, I love these two shimmers, Squeeze Me and Tangerine Dreams. They are wonderful. I have a pretty sizable dip and rise and grind. It's also so bright that I don't think you'll be able to see it. This was the first 9-pan palette that I ever bought from Colourpop. It was released on my birthday a couple years ago. And yeah, this is stunning. If you like orange and if you like good eyeshadow, I mean, so I know Clementine is also like my favorite glitter. I know not everyone likes the glitters, but it is my favorite. I love it so incredibly much. I think this is an amazing orange palette. I don't think there's anything here that doesn't belong, because even You Peel Me, whenever you blend it out, kind of like Zested, it has a little bit of like a really warm like hint whenever you blend it out, and I just feel like everything in here belongs. They hit the orange concept like right on the head and made you be able to make like a lot of good looks. And yeah, I really, really like this. All right, I've been filming for a while, but last but certainly not least might actually be a shock to everyone, because I've actually never used it on my channel, and it is the Colourpop Nude Mood palette. So let me just flip her back. Here she is. There are no pressed glitters. There is one matte with pressed glitters. That is the Cocoa. And yeah, there is one shade. No, that just has an apostrophe. Never mind. There are no shades that are labeled as unsafe for the immediate eye area. Put on airs. I've said it like 2 other times. I'll say it again. Is that like Natasha Denona foil quality? I love it a lot. There also is a Wink Wink, which is kind of like a Super Shock shade. Love it a lot, and I don't really like Super Shock shadows, if I'm gonna be honest. And then Lap of Lux, which I thought was gonna be like was it Python? I think it was Python. Whatever that like dry matte that just kind of looks like it has a shimmer on it. I thought that's what this was gonna be, but no, it is blinding. It's very warm. It's a very warm tone. I have used the snot out of Mugged Off. I don't know if you can see that dip, but I've used this palette a lot in my everyday life. I haven't really felt the need to use it in like a palette comparison or anything. I love this palette. I think all the mattes are amazing. Moody is a dark brown, but it isn't that dark brown where you put it down and then you brush it away. It's dark brown and it stays dark brown. I know it's nude and I know it's basic, but I think this is my favorite palette. I know a lot of people say that their favorite neutral palette would be Coconut Dreams. What was it? The coconut palette that I talked about literally 20 minutes ago. I know a lot of people say that that's Colourpop's best neutral palette, but I would say that this is Colourpop's best neutral palette. I think this is another like overlooked Colourpop launch, because this and Blush Crush, which was like the sister pink version of this, were Ulta exclusives for a long time. I think they're still available at Ulta. I know this is definitely available on Colourpop's website. My Ulta didn't have it, so I drove like across town to try and get it from the other Ulta, and I got it from the other Ulta, and I love it. I know it's basic and I know it's boring, but it's so pretty. I think it's a neutral lover's dream if you really like warm tones, but there is like a little bit of like neutral, and this is kind of like a cool, I don't know. I think this is a very well put together nude palette that could appeal to a variety of skin tones. Obviously they have their like nude, whatever shade, don't look at it, but I do feel like this is a very well all-rounded, I wanted to say well-rounded and all-inclusive, so I said well all-rounded. I think this is a very well-rounded and all-inclusive neutral palette. It's my favorite. I haven't used it on my channel, so I don't know how many of you will believe me, but I promise you it is amazing and I love every second of having it on my eyes. So, pivot. That is my ranking of my 18 Colourpop 9-pan palettes. Oh my goodness. I definitely need to get more use out of all of them, but especially the 5 that I mentioned in the beginning that I haven't used at all. But I will record ranking all of my 12-pan palettes, and that one's going to be a lot more messy because there are some that I don't like. So if you're excited for that just rant-filled, just trash video, stay tuned. But otherwise, thank you everybody so much for watching. Let me know down below, what do you think of any of these palettes and their placement? And am I wrong? Am I right? What do you think? I'd love to start a conversation down below in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.